All right, so yesterday I made a video called Why the Game Has Changed, where I went through my strategy and my mindset heading into Q4. But today I want to touch on a specific topic that I mentioned in this video, which are the specific altcoins that I'm looking at in Q4. I kind of skimmed over them in yesterday's video, but today I want to go through the exact altcoins of my exact theses behind these altcoins, so all of you are well prepared for this next leg in the cycle. So I'm going to break things down in terms of categories, the top sectors that I think are going to feature most prominently in the leaderboards in Q4, and I'm going to go through my top 2 to 3 tokens per sector. So it's going to be a super alpha packed video. Make sure you have that subscribe button turned on and that post notification bell switched on so you don't miss a single video like this one. Quickly, before we get into the narratives and the altcoins under each narrative that I'm expecting to outperform in Q4, I just want to quickly look at the Bitcoin chart because we have seen a big impulse move today. Basically, what's happened is we've seen another sweep of the channel low here. You can see this is one of the many times we've actually touched the low or, came close to the low, and we've actually pushed up above the channel high, and we're heading towards the major resistance zone here at 116K. I think the positive sign for Bitcoin is that technically this is a higher low, but because we are still technically putting in lower highs across the board, this still looks like a downtrend to me. So overall, it looks like it could be the beginning of a reversal, but a true proven market structure shift would only happen once we close above the prior high. So the reaction to 116 is going to be super important. If you see price action like this, well, this is going to be an official structure break, and then we can start drawing the new uptrend. So you can see this is a downtrend. If we started to form a new uptrend, we can draw a new channel potentially, which will mark a structure shift. But it hasn't happened yet, and I would still be remaining cautious as long as we are under that zone. You would wait for a daily confirmation above that zone, but thought I would give a little bit of an update on Bitcoin as to what I'm seeing there. So without further ado, let's get into things. Let's talk sector by sector, and I've got some altcoin alpha to share in today's video. Actually, one of the tokens I'm speaking about today, I recently took a very big position in today. So I'll tell you my thesis behind that trade and why I've taken that position and my outlook. So firstly, the first narrative you have to have your eye on heading into Q4 is the stablecoin narrative. I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone. It's been pretty much the fastest and strongest growing narrative in the crypto space. You can see the stablecoin supply across the sector has been going parabolic. A couple of years ago, we were sitting at 60 billion in terms of stablecoin market cap. Now we're heading over 150 billion, probably going to head to the $1 trillion mark, to be honest, because all of these big funds, even sovereign nations like the US, they're all pushing for stablecoin adoption, especially the US, who wants to solidify, their standing as the world's reserve currency. Stablecoins are a way for them to maintain relevancy, and I think the market also views this as a massive opportunity because the traditional banking system is relatively inefficient. Stablecoins make things much more efficient. And obviously we've seen businesses like Tether come onto the market and become absolute behemoths with the profitability that they are able to generate. Speaking of Tether, this leads me into probably my top stablecoin pick for Q4. You are going to have to be a little bit careful with your entry here. I'll explain why, but it probably is the strongest stablecoin protocol for this next leg in the market. That is XPL, or Plasma, which recently launched. Now, I did post about this before it launched in the Discord. I said that I was going to buy in if it dropped below 70. Unfortunately for me, this is actually pre-market. When it launched above 70, and then the first dip took it to like 72. So I never actually validated my first entry, which is a bit annoying. But now I get another bite at the cherry, now that it's run up into price discovery, and now it's come back down, starting to form a little bit of a base here, which coincides with the 4-hour money noodle and also this horizontal base on the 1 hour as well. So if you don't know what XPL does, it's basically the Tether chain. So Paolo, who's the founder of Tether, he's invested twice in the protocol, and Tether is heavily aligned with the protocol. This is essentially the closest thing that you can get to investing in Tether pre-IPO, and that's probably still some time off. So I think there is demand for this as the trade that's most closely aligned to Tether, and I think in terms of the stablecoin sector overall, there's a couple of other protocols which I'll mention in a minute here, but XPL is probably the main one which is going to act as the main alpha or the main leader for the sector. It's also one of the most efficient chains in terms of fees for stablecoin transfers. They get lots of rebates and discounts to make it the most attractive place to swap, transact stablecoins, which is obviously attracting a lot of capital into the ecosystem. And I think there's also an opportunity to farm the ecosystem with a lot of protocols paying really high APRs. Steven did an amazing video which goes through his farming tutorial on how to potentially get access to an XPL airdrop, and there's obviously some ways to make some good APRs on your stablecoins as well. So I think XPL, it's well positioned as the leading stablecoin play. In terms of price action, it is coming down into a major support zone for the first time in a while. Look, the risky thing with these new launches is that you don't have the price history that you may have on another token. So the tokenomics are a little bit more opaque, which naturally increases the risk factor on the trade. So if you really wanted to be safe, you'd wait and see where this consolidates. What I've personally done is I've started laddering in a little bit as we get closer to this region, as I think this is a decent risk-reward region given the fact that it's, the first major retest that we are getting. However, I am prepared for the eventuality that it could go lower. Technically, this is now a lower time frame downtrend, although it should find some support here. So I guess if we do start to break down below, I'll consider maybe cutting a little bit and rebuying some a bit lower. Of course, your next targets are the 70 to 80 cent region. If we did get back down there again, I think that would be a massive, massive opportunity, but I'm not sure we do. So I'm happy to start laddering in now and see what happens. And the other thing that you can do is wait for price action to eventuate a little bit more and then actually take a breakout trade. So you might actually see a noodle flip, which coincides with a break of the diagonal structure here. And you can look to take a breakout trade as well. So there are many options on this coin, but it should be a coin that's towards the top of your watch list, given the fact that it has a lot of attention. It's quite a popular trade, but not just popular within the crypto community, popular in the broader community in terms of getting exposure to, what is probably the biggest narrative in crypto right now. Now, if you want to take an XPL trade, I actually have a very nice offer for you right now. We're giving away free $15 XPL trades for new users. So these are no string trades. You don't need to deposit. You don't need to KYC. You just need to sign up using the link in the description below, and you will get a voucher issued to your account within 3 hours of registration, which is going to give you a free 15x trade. So this trade, you could take on 10x, which would give you a $150 position. You could take it on 5x for a $75 position, and you can go long or you can go short. So if you agree with me and you think this is a decent zone to ladder in, let's say, you could ladder in 10x in this zone. If it did bounce and go up a 2x from there, you would effectively make $150, and you can close that position and take the cash that you make. So it's basically a free hit. Obviously, you're not guaranteed to make money trading, but it's a free swing because it's a free voucher, so you can't lose as long as you sign up and capitalize in time, because this will only be for the first 100 users, and this also expires on October 3rd. So if you missed the XPL ICO, you can access that in the link in the description below. What are some other stablecoin plays that I'm looking at? Well, one of them is Athena. Athena's USDE market cap growth has actually been super impressive. And although the price action has struggled over the past few weeks as there's been a big sell-off, and that was largely, due to the treasury vehicle accumulating ENA, and then that trade got sold off. So buy the rumor, sell the news. We're now coming back down to a major support level where I think it makes sense to maybe beginning to add a little bit more spot again, because I still think over a mid to long-term time horizon, Athena is still one of the top stablecoin protocols. And if you don't look at the chart and don't look at the price action, the metrics, which is really important, the underlying fundamentals are very strong with the USD ETH growth, with the USDE primary market activities, so the actual activity of the stablecoin itself, their reserve fund also increasing. So the metrics across the board look good for Athena, and that's one of the reasons why, even though I've traded it many times and it's been a very successful trade, I would look at rotating some of those profits now back into a bigger spot position. The other coin that I want to mention now before we pivot to the next narrative is ClearPool. I don't think a lot of people are realizing that ClearPool are actually partnered with XPL. So price action has been relatively quiet. It's essentially just chopping here in a range, but they're actually one of the strategic partners of Plasma, and they're going to be debuting their CPUSD and PayFi vaults on chain, which are basically built for earning yield on stablecoins and getting capital efficiency from your stablecoin. So ClearPool, which is an RWA protocol, is now firmly in the PayFi space, and I think that collaboration holds it in good stead to increase its TVL. So from a narrative perspective, I think it's very interesting and probably a little bit slept on right now. And if you actually look at the chart, there's a very nice confluence with the range low region, which is this zone here, which pretty much every time it's gone to this zone, you've seen a nice bounce. And even if you just treat this as a swing trade, it's an 80% swing from range low to range high. And obviously you could, maybe TP there and take a breakout trade if it does end up breaking any higher. So with CPOOL, I'm basically just playing the range, but this is a decent zone to start to consider laddering in my opinion, because you have a clear invalidation below that level as well. All right, now let's get into the next narrative, which are the DEXs. Obviously, Perp DEXs have been the big narrative in the market. Look, to be completely honest with you, as I said in yesterday's video, I feel like the trade is getting a little bit saturated now in the short term, but that doesn't mean that there's an opportunity long term. So what are the opportunities? Well, the first opportunity is looking at longing the governance tokens of the main DEXs. Now, a token like ASTER, as much potential as it has, I don't know if I have that much confidence holding a huge bag heading into this next period in the market, just given the fact that it already ran up quite aggressively. It already had a huge speculative premium in terms of its valuation, I think hitting a $20 billion FDV, and I don't feel like the risk reward is great here, even though I think Binance continues to push it, and even though it can do quite well. What I would do with ASTER, because I'm still willing to get back into a trade and I still hold roughly a 10% moon bag, is I would just chart the coin. I know it's ranging right now, but if it went back into a clean uptrend and started trading a little bit cleaner in terms of price action, I could potentially look at a long continuation entry. I think the protocol that's probably a little bit better from a risk reward perspective right now in the Perp DEX realm is Apex. So this trade has also somewhat gotten a little bit saturated. So I don't think, it's the greatest trade in the world or whatever. But I did actually take a position yesterday on this dip. I actually got in a little bit lower, saying it wicked down to, it's because it was technically here on the chart. It wicked down to like $1.60 to $1.70. I got a bit of an entry there on the deviation below this level. I was using the money noodle as confluence. So if you want to hide the line here, just really pivoting off that 1 hour noodle. By the way, the noodle is available for all Mars High Club members. And took a little bit of a position there. It's now slightly up, which is good, but for me, it's a little bit more. Obviously, I've got my stop below this level at 150, but I'm happy to hold that position as a little bit more of a midterm play now, on the premise that Apex, if you guys don't know, Apex is basically being linked to Bybit. So ASTER is linked to Binance, Apex is linked to Bybit. Obviously, Bybit has ByReal as well. But the fact that we have seen Ben tweeting about Apex and Mantle has been teasing a collaboration with Apex, and we saw the buyback program announced, I think this one could be an interesting play for the next quarter. Risk reward isn't super skewed to the upside, but I definitely think there's a trade here, and that's why I did add it to my portfolio yesterday. So, you can play off this noodle as well, and you can play off price action, but this is one that I think has slightly more upside than ASTER. It's one that if you're in Mars High Club, you should have been onto pretty early. Fabian here posted about it 4 days ago when it was at 85 cents, and then it ran up a 3x to $2.70. So that was another amazing trade from Fabian. Honestly, he's been on absolute fire recently, hitting a 3x on ENA, hitting the 3x on KLED recently as well. That was in the last week, hitting his 3x on Apex. He's the 3x king at the moment, so been amazing to have him part of the group. He doesn't tweet much, so the fact that he's giving exclusive alpha pretty much daily in the Mars High Club, I think, is a huge blessing for members. He's honestly one of the best low cap / fundamental analyst that I have ever seen in the space, and that's why I was really keen to get him on board when I started the Mars High Club last year. So it's good to see that we're bearing a lot of fruit right now in terms of Fabian's calls. And Fabian, I got to extend an olive branch to you, or thank you, and say thanks for helping me hit some of my biggest trades as well. I've found a lot of big trades through your channel, like Launchcoin, for example. I remember you called that a 17 mil and it went to 300 mil. So you've definitely made me a pretty penny or two. I definitely owe you a beer next time you come to Dubai. But continuing on with what I was saying before, the first way is playing the governance tokens. The second way is actually farming the Perp DEXs. So I think a big opportunity now is actually farming and taking advantage of the points program. So Fabian actually did a write-up in his Altcoin Alpha channel, going through some of the top DEXs that he's farming with strategies. So he's giving regular updates on these: Lighter, EdgeX, Ostium, Paradex, and Extended being the main ones that he is farming. I actually went back in his channel and I noticed that he actually found ASTER and was talking about farming ASTER all the way back in June, on June 12th. absolutely unbelievable. This is before anyone was talking about ASTER. He actually spotted that really early, and he was farming lighter since April. So anyone that is in the Discord would be getting a nice lighter airdrop because points are roughly going for $50 a point. So if you have 1,000 points, you may very well be looking at a $50,000 airdrop, which is kind of crazy. So if you want exclusive access to the earliest alpha in the market, whether it be trading, airdrop farming, or narrative plays, which are obviously a big thing at the moment with all the rotations that are happening, I'll leave a link in the description to the Mars High Club where you can join our other 1,600 members and get the earliest alpha in crypto. You can see our members right now are super happy. JOC today left a nice little testimonial here saying that the educational content and the trading school, which we just launched, by the way, we have a full educational platform to teach you how to trade from scratch. So it's not only calls, we also have great education in the group. He goes on to say, just what us newbies need to get learning from excellent traders in the group. Morin, who is one of our top traders and educators in the group, had a great educational stream explaining everything so simply and clearly. I'm so happy I joined this group. You have covered us from all angles. Good work to all of you. I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you, JOC. That means a lot to me. We do it for you guys, and we want to build the biggest and best crypto community in the world. So before we get onto the last three narratives, just to reiterate, I do think farming the DEXs is a big opportunity alongside, you can play the token, but I actually think the best opportunities right now are in farming the DEXs, just given the fact that that narrative looks a little bit saturated for now, in my opinion. Of course, things could be irrational and run higher than you expect, but I'm just being realistic given, how much these DEXs have run up and how many rotations we've seen in that sector over the past week. All right, the next sector, I won't talk about this one for too long, but it's prediction markets. This is something you should be looking into. I remember we actually had a very good trade on FLIPR. I remember dude posted that in the Discord. It was over a 10x play, so that's a great one. But heading into a potential polymarket token, obviously Kalshi is gaining a lot of steam as well. I think prediction markets are a massive trend, so you can pause the video and look at some of the potential ecosystem proxies to look into. There are all sorts of, protocols building on prediction market rails, but it's clearly a massive trend and has gained a lot of popularity in recent times. So I couldn't make this video about Q4 narratives without mentioning that briefly. What I want to go into a bit more depth on, however, is AI, because I still think AI is one of those sectors where there's so much opportunity, just given the fact how much interest there is in TradFi. I mean, Nvidia keeps on going up and up. AI continues to keep lifting the stock indexes to all-time highs. So it would be absolutely remiss of us not to look into some of the best proxies in crypto. Now, in terms of narrative, the AI agent protocols aren't performing that well. Like the whole January AI season that we saw is not the current meta of the AI space right now. I think the meta of the space right now is looking at the protocols which are actually earning revenue and are most closely aligned to the broader trends that we're seeing in the artificial intelligence market. In my opinion, those two being GPUs, which is obviously powering Nvidia's massive run, alongside robotics. I think that's the bigger, longer term trend, which may take a bit more time to play out, but is a big trend. On the first one, which is GPU plays, the one that I'm most interested in right now is ASTER. Now, you might be looking at this price action going, that's a little bit weird given the fact it's run up so aggressively and it's now experiencing a bit of a sell-off. But the reason for this is because of a big announcement they made today, which I think was front run in the market. You can clearly see people were buying up the token, and now whales and insiders are closing their positions, which is very normal when these events happen. But what they announced was actually quite big. And I do think the market is fading this a little bit. And this is the announcement that they have a DAT, so a treasury company launching that's going to acquire ASTER tokens. So they're committing to $344 million of ASTER in a digital asset treasury, the world's first strategic compute reserve designed to scale AI infrastructure. Without getting into too many specifics as to why this DAT is different from other DATs, I think from a broader perspective, like when you actually look at the, Ethereum DATs and more recently like the altcoin DATs, Sui and WorldCoin and all these other ones, like honestly, they aren't that attractive because anyone that wanted to buy these tokens probably already has had a chance to, purchase these tokens on the open market, and there isn't that much of a crossover in terms of interest from the traditional realm, so stock market participants and, a token like Sui, in my opinion. Whereas, like, unlike Bitcoin, which has obviously, had a lot of demand. Whereas I think Aether is in an interesting spot because clearly the demand is there for GPU plays. Like, people are hungry, especially with NVIDIA's growth and the projected growth of the GPU sector, to actually capitalize on this sector. And I think this DAT is a much more attractive asset to hold for anyone wanting to get exposure to GPU plays, considering they're one of the biggest decentralized enterprise GPU companies in the world and could be just one of the biggest GPU companies in the world, period, like longer term, if they can actually pull off what they are building here. Obviously, the fact they're on blockchain rails actually enables them to scale a lot faster than traditional hardware companies, which I just think it's a lot more interesting compared to other DATs. And there are also some mechanisms with the buybacks of the token. For example, I think over like half the circulating supply is being bought back, which they announced. This is obviously front run, and we're seeing a little bit of a sell-off now. But I'm going to be using this dip to add a little bit more to my position. And this is a trade I already started taking today, just laddering in as the token has dipped lower. Obviously, we want to wait to see where things settle a little bit. Can we reclaim range low? But it's not something I am looking too much into in terms of TA. I'm probably just going to keep laddering in, and I'm treating this as a midterm play that could be a high upside one. Midterm and long-term. Like, I have a long-term position, and I have a short, I guess, more of a midterm position, and I've got 50-50 in both. So my midterm position captures upside to when these buybacks begin, and then my longer term position captures upside to whether they can really penetrate this industry and we can actually see big adoption, and potentially this appeals to funds that want exposure to enterprise GPU. And I just think the narrative is quite strong, especially given the fact that its market cap's around like 650 million right now. That's not a huge market cap considering the amount of buy pressure that's likely going to start coming in. So even though it was front run, I think it's still an interesting play. Now I want to talk about two protocols which haven't been performing that well in terms of price action, but could definitely make strong comebacks. So you should have these at the top of your AI watch list. I talk a lot on the channel about relative strength, but this doesn't mean that you should always ape things that are going up. What you can also do is add tokens that are exhibiting weakness or are just going flat or just moving sideways to your watch list. And when they start exhibiting relative strength, when they start to make comebacks, then you can start to look to position in these coins. So something that I always do is I have my trading view organized. So I have my top AI protocols in terms of, projects with strong fundamentals, and, my top RWA protocols in terms of the projects with the strongest fundamentals, stable coins as well, prediction markets as well, all these big narratives, because when things start to move, I want to be able to position straight away into the strongest coins. And one of them towards the top of my list, and I'll get to the other one in just a second here, is Cookie. The reason it's there and the reason it's on my watch list, and once this starts to regain some relative strength again, I'd probably look at taking another position, is it's basically a pick and shovel play. Like similar to Kaito, you aren't just betting on a specific AI protocol, you're betting on the platform, which is facilitating both the analytics and the social campaigns for the entire space overall. So it's basically like buying an index fund for AI agents or AI protocols instead of having to bet on one specific one where the odds are stacked against you. So that's why I do like it as a fundamental play. And I think they've got some interesting stuff coming very soon in some of the other sectors that we've discussed earlier in this video. So it's one keeping an eye on. The other thing is they've had a bit of dilution this year, but the parity between market cap and FDV is getting pretty close now. So it's much, much closer to being fully diluted. So there's less sell pressure on the market now as well. You may see that starting to reflect in price soon. Another token that I wanted to mention that's also on my watch list when things turn around is Camp Network. Camp Network is very interesting because they're actually an IP layer one. What does that mean? Well, essentially there's, I think, $61 trillion worth of IP sitting in the global IP economy. And that IP is essentially untapped, so it can't be used to train AI models. It can't be used to actually monetize. We've actually seen this in recent times with like the PEPE meme, for example, Matt Fury's PEPE drawing. He didn't actually make money off because it was basically like fair use, like anyone could use it and make a coin. Whereas if it was listed from the get-go on Camp Network, if the IP was registered, then he could earn royalties over time in perpetuity every time, let's say, a token is traded or someone uses that image. So the IP economy is absolutely massive. I think it's a big thing for creators. It's a big thing for brands. It's a big thing for AI in general in terms of training models. And Camp has built something very, very interesting. It's a niche product for sure, but if it hits, it could be quite a big sector in my opinion, given the total addressable market. So it's in a similar boat to Cookie, where you would want to wait for some strength, but it's one of those tokens. And you can see on the chart here, it's in a downtrend, but it's one of those tokens that it can, I think, rip higher quite aggressively once the reversal takes place. It might take some time, but you can watch the noodle. So the 8-hour is acting as a bit of resistance right now, and you can mark out your lows, and you can play basically a range-based reclaim strategy for trading these coins. So that's the thing with crypto. It's great to have your watch list prepared, because when things start to turn, you don't need to ape into everything now and hold huge bloated portfolios. Like I talked about that yesterday. Don't just hold 20, 30, 40 altcoins at once. You can have things on your watch list and then pull the trigger when the stars align on that trade, or when you actually get validation for that trade. And I think it's very important to think about the market this way, heading into this next period in the market in Q4. And then finally, before I get into the final sector, I just wanted to mention robotics. This is another area that I'd be looking into. It's a much more nascent sector. Honestly, a lot of these protocols aren't even really robotics, but there are a couple interesting ones. Probably the top two for me being Edge and CODEC. Edge has actually had quite a big sell-off. I think this could be a reasonable one soon. They've been building in robotics for quite some time, way longer than the majority of these have pivoted to robotics or been launched. I remember speaking to the team, I think last year, and they were talking about the stack that they were building. So they're OGs in the robotic space, and they're actually OGs in the DePIN space. And I think still quite undervalued. So this is one that I would keep an eye on. CODEC as well. This is probably, when I was doing my robotics research, this is the one, I don't have a position yet, but this is the one that stood out in terms of the top one fundamentally for me out of this list of robotics plays. Obviously outside of Peak Network, which is your biggest and most proven robotics DePIN play. So this is probably one to look into as well. It's woken up a little bit recently, but it's had a bit of a pullback alongside the broader market. So as a subsector of AI, I think GPUs are a big focus, and also robotics are a big focus. Now, to end the video, I wanted to talk about a counter trade, because I've been seeing a lot of discourse about this on X, about how memes are dead and they're never going to come back. Honestly, who knows? But I wanted to give you a bit of a strategy for actually playing memes. And I think the strategy is buying Pump Fund. I'll tell you why, because if memes don't come back, Pump Fund can still succeed in its own right. It has streaming. It has the creator incentives through streaming as well. You can launch any token on Pump. It doesn't just need to be a meme. It could be an AI coin. It could be any coin. So it could benefit from other niches. And it's also in the revenue meta as well. So it's in that meta. So it can succeed if memes don't come back. But if memes do come back, Pump probably double succeeds, because everything I just said is still true. But now, with memes hot, many more memes are going to launch. And where are they going to launch? They're probably going to launch on Pump. I know there's Bonk and other launch pads as well, but Pump is the main one and the most solidified launch pad in the market. So it's kind of a win-win bet, which I think makes the risk reward much better on the Pump trade than it is on just going and longing a bunch of random memes. So I think you could introduce a barbell strategy. You could hold 50% Pump in your meme portfolio. And then with the other 50%, I wouldn't go too far down the risk curve. I would just look at established coins. And I'll go through the top list here and let you know what my favorites are. So DOGE, I think it's too high of a market cap to be that interesting. SHIBA, I think it's also too high to be that interesting at this point, although it's established. PEPE, I do like this one. It's very close to my heart because it's been one of my best trades. Once again, probably not huge upside, so I still probably prefer the risk reward on Pump right now. The one I get quite interested in this list is PENGU. I'm a big fan of memes that have their own IP. I think this is going to be a big narrative. I spoke before about Camp Network and IP. I think PENGU's just built an amazing brand. When you can build a brand and have your own IP and your own merch and your own brand assets, I think this is quite a powerful thing in terms of building community and then your ability to monetize that later down the track. So PENGU at 1.8 bill is probably the most interesting out of the four here. And then the other meme, which I think is quite similar but much more undervalued, is Mew. So this one is also under the IP narrative because they've built their own brand. They've got their own pop-up stores. They've got some amazing stuff launching soon. They've been teasing some video-based stuff, which is quite cool. So they are probably the other one, and I think they're actually quite undervalued compared to PENGU, that are really pushing the boundaries and building their own stuff. If you look at, WIF, they're not really doing anything right now. If you look at all of these, pretty much, they're not really doing anything that interesting. Mew and PENGU are the ones that are still pushing and are still working really hard on fleshing out their brands. And I think that will pay dividends if memes come back. They will probably be the fastest horses out of the gate for that reason. Also on a relative strength basis, like remember PopCat was in the multi-billions. Mew's actually overtaken PopCat. So I think relative strength gives you an idea as to what's going to perform if memes come back. In terms of the rest from this list, probably SPX is the other one, just because I think Murad is a super influential figure. So if memes come back, Murad will probably push this higher. So from this entire list, I would say my favorites are PENGU, SPX, and Mew. They're probably the three that I look at. PEPE is very close to my heart, but the higher market cap makes it a little bit harder to justify compared to the others. And then obviously Pump as your play on the other side of the barbell on the safer end of the spectrum. Obviously nothing in crypto is safe, but compared to the two. So those are my top narratives and some of the coins that I'm most interested in under each narrative. Let me know in the comments below what coin, if you could only hold one altcoin, what altcoin would you hold for Q4? You can only hold one, and I'll be picking a comment and I will comment on it in the next video, and you're going to win $500. We're doing that regular series here on the channel. And remember, there's a link in the description to the Mars High Club. Come join, be a part of the amazing community with our other 1,600 members. It's honestly been amazing to be a part of that community. It continues to get better and better. I think the trades are getting better, the education's getting better, the calls have been great. So yeah, I just really love the vibes in that group. And then also, I'll leave a link to Blofin if you want a free plasma trade. So see you in the next one. Have a lovely rest of your day. Peace out.